What happens when silence finally breaks, and a rumor built on whispers meets a voice that refuses to be bent by fantasy? In an industry where every glance is analyzed, every pause is misinterpreted, and every silence is treated like a confession, Wang finally stepped forward and spoke the words that have been echoing in fan theories for months. I have no personal business with Lu. Simple, direct, unembellished. And yet, in that moment, it sent a quiet shockwave through a story that had grown far beyond the truth. Right now, right before the next revelation, is your chance to stay connected. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another powerful story, another shocking twist, or another unforgettable journey. For weeks, the so-called love triangle had taken on a life of its own. Headlines painted invisible tension, comment sections became battlegrounds, and speculative narratives turned ordinary professional interactions into dramatic chapters of an imagined romance. Wang was placed at the center of it all, caught between two names, two narratives, and one overwhelming machine of curiosity that never sleeps. But what happens when the man at the heart of the storm decides to draw a line? The statement itself felt calm, almost surgical. I have no personal business with Lu. Not a scandal. Not a feud. Not a secret heartbreak. Just clarity. And in that clarity, something powerful happened. The fantasy collapsed. Lu's name had been pulled into a story that was never hers to carry. Professional respect had been twisted into romantic speculation. Silence had been mistaken for mystery, and distance had been rebranded as drama. But Dylan's words did not humiliate, did not accuse, did not escalate. They simply reset the narrative. They returned everything to its original, honest form. And then the question shifted. If there was never a love triangle, why did it grow so large? Because the public loves a story more than it loves the truth. In an industry fueled by imagination, fans don't just watch characters, they write their own versions of the actors' lives. A handshake becomes a hidden message. A smile becomes proof. A delayed response becomes emotional distance. Wang had lived inside that world quietly, carefully, choosing silence over correction, privacy over performance. But silence has a cost. When you don't speak, others speak for you. And for the first time, Dylan chose not to let the story write him. This wasn't anger. This wasn't frustration. This was boundary. A line drawn with control, not chaos. A sentence delivered without drama, yet heavy with finality. No personal business. No hidden chapters. No secret history. No triangle. It was a revelation not because it shocked, but because it simplified something that had been needlessly complicated. And then, another truth emerged beneath the surface. He did not say, I dislike her. He did not say, there was conflict. He did not say, there was something we tried to hide. He simply removed the fantasy. He removed the unnecessary tension. He removed the scaffolding of a story that never belonged to reality. This is what maturity looks like in a world addicted to chaos. This is what control looks like when surrounded by noise. This is what happens when a man refuses to let fiction replace fact. But the story does not end with that sentence. It deepens. Because when one illusion fades, another question rises. If there is no triangle, then what was everyone really seeing? Perhaps it was never about romance. Perhaps it was about projection. About boredom meeting imagination. About the need to create drama where none exists. Dylan's career has been built on intensity, on roles that blur the line between vulnerability and strength. But his real life, it turns out, is quieter, stronger, more disciplined. And in that quiet discipline, he chose not to feed the machine any longer. There is a strange power in refusing to perform for rumors. There is a rare strength in giving the public less, not more. This moment was not a confession. It was a correction. Not to fans, but to the story itself. And somewhere in that calm declaration, something even more intriguing was revealed. He is no longer playing into the fantasy. He is no longer allowing external narratives to define him. He is stepping into a version of himself that chooses peace over performance. That is not weakness. That is evolution. The love triangle didn't shatter because it was exposed. It disappeared because it was never real. And Dylan Wang didn't break character. He simply stepped out of a character that was never his to play. In an industry built on illusion, truth doesn't scream. It whispers. And when it does, the loudest stories suddenly feel very, very quiet. So the real question is no longer about Bai Lu, or about triangles, or about theories. The real question is this. How many other stories do we believe simply because the truth stayed silent for too long? And now that the silence has been broken, one thing is clear. Dylan Wang is no longer just a subject of stories. He is the one rewriting the ending. What comes after the truth is finally spoken is not peace. It is reckoning. Because when a story collapses, it doesn't disappear quietly. It fractures. It lingers in the minds of those who built it, believed it, defended it. And now, with Dylan Wang's calm, deliberate words hanging in the air, the world is left facing a difficult reality. Everything it fought over may have been built on shadows. The phrase itself keeps echoing. I have no personal business with Bai Lu. Not cold, not cruel, just final. In the space between those words lives a deeper transformation. A shift not just in the narrative around him, but in the man himself. For years, Dylan Wang has carried the weight of expectation without complaint. Every role he played, every public appearance, every shared stage moment was quietly repurposed by strangers into a story he never agreed to tell. And for a long time he let them. But something has changed. This is the quiet rebellion of a man who is tired of being written by rumor. There is a dignity in the way he said it, not with theatrics, not with anger, but with the kind of calm that only comes from knowing exactly who you are. That kind of clarity terrifies a world built on fantasy, because fantasy needs cracks to survive. And Dylan just sealed them. The so-called triangle wasn't just a rumor. It was a mirror, a reflection of how desperately audiences crave emotional narratives beyond the screen. They wanted a love story that blurred the line between fiction and reality. They wanted conflict without consequence, mystery without responsibility. And now, they're left with something far more rare. Truth. But truth doesn't trend as easily. Truth doesn't create fan wars. Truth doesn't fuel comment sections. Truth simply exists. And existence can feel boring to people addicted to drama. Yet, behind that so-called boring, truth is a man silently choosing control over chaos, respect over speculation, and privacy over performance. There is something cinematic about that choice. Something powerful. Because while fictional heroes shout, real ones whisper. This moment marks the end of an era of narratives that were never his. It marks the beginning of something quieter, stronger, and more grounded. Not a celebrity chasing validation, but a man setting boundaries. And boundaries in this industry are revolutionary. The cameras still flash. The headlines still spin. The comments still fly. But the rules have changed. Now, people cannot pretend they didn't hear him. Now, they cannot twist his silence into secret meanings. Now, they must face the simple, unexciting, unmovable truth. Sometimes there is no hidden love story. Sometimes there is no triangle. Sometimes there is just work, professionalism, distance, and dignity. And that reality, as unspectacular as it seems, is far more powerful than any rumor ever was. But something unexpected has emerged from this. A different kind of tension. Not romantic. Not dramatic. Psychological. Because when fans are forced to let go of a fantasy, they don't just move on. They feel loss. They feel denial. They feel betrayal, even though nothing was promised. And that emotional complexity is now the real story unfolding quietly behind the scenes. Dylan didn't just end a rumor. He triggered a reflection. A moment where people must ask themselves why they needed the story in the first place. Was it love? Or was it boredom? Was it belief? Or was it escape? These are questions that don't sit comfortably in the mind. And Dylan is not answering them. He doesn't need to. He already said enough. In the end, this is no longer a story about Bai Lu. It's no longer about imagined triangles. It's about a man who stepped out of the fog and chose to be seen clearly, even if clarity is less entertaining. And somewhere in that brave, quiet choice, he became more real than any story anyone ever tried to write for him. Because the most powerful stories are not the ones fueled by rumors. They are the ones ended by truth. And now that the truth has been spoken, the silence that follows is no longer empty. It is full of meaning, full of consequence, full of something far more dangerous to fantasy than scandal, reality.